So I guess Rob Manfred is still peddling the whole stadiums add money to the city lie.
You are Locked On A's, your daily Oakland A's podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, A's fans, and welcome to Locked On A's. This is the podcast where we cover your Oakland A's in their final year in Oakland in what we hope will continue to be a surprising final year in Oakland as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. I am a baseball podcaster and have been for the last 10 years. I have to adjust my headset a little bit there. Sorry. It was starting to slip off my gigantic size 8 head. Follow us at Locked On A's on Twitter or whatever it's called now. Also on Instagram. Follow us on YouTube. And you can follow me. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. If you're listening to on the show every single day and you want to comment on any of our social media sites, check out this hashtag Everyday A's. Put it on there, and we can tell who's listening to this every single day. I'm also the host of the Locked On MLB podcast. So that is a show that covers the entire league. So if you want to see me in an eerily similar background here at the luxurious Locked On MLB studios in Pasadena, California, overlooking the historic Rose Bowl, please check it out. We've had some wonderful listeners writing some nice things to us about the show. We want to just come on and say Wes Hoffman, who watched the show, was a guest on the show. I've known Wes for a long time. So said, I'm glad I got off work to attend the doubleheader. Langoliers just owns Texas. That's true. We already hit the 3 home run game earlier, hit all those other home runs. All this getting 3 home runs in the game earlier. The A's just couldn't manage any shutdown innings in the second game, and their starting pitcher, Beto, leaving the exit early with an injury hurt too. Love seeing the team fight till the end, but it sucks seeing the tying run stuck on second base when the second game ended. Yep, that's true. And Thomas Joseph, 3488, who has a Montreal Expos logo as his avatar on YouTube. That's interesting. Yeah, that was the last city ripped away from their fan base. He says, or maybe I don't know. TP Joseph could be a woman, could be so. I don't know. I don't know how TP Joseph identifies. But it says it's fascinating to watch this team succeed with all the distractions and a $47 million payroll. Yeah, it would be amazing if they had an owner who cared. If they had an owner who put any effort to make the stadium remotely friendly and to put a product on the field. This would be a really, really fun team to be following. It is a fun team right now, but they are being ripped away. And I do believe, and the more I see, the more I read, the more I think that the money for a stadium in Las Vegas is just not going to be there. Even, there's going to be 300 million tomatoes from Nevada and from Las Vegas, however it's set up, towards a stadium, and that's not nearly going to be enough. And I don't care what they say the estimates are, it's always going to be more. It's always going to take longer. And as I've said over and over again, where is it going to be built? Has that been finalized? What is going to be built? That's certainly not been finalized. No plans or anything have been finalized. And how's it going to be paid for? The fact that the A's are still basically doing a GoFundMe account to get this thing going, I don't think I'm thinking, yes, it's probably more likely than not to happen, but it's not a slam dunk. And Vegas could very well say, the hell with this. We'll put something else that actually makes money. And that is the key. If this was a huge boon financially to build a stadium and the surrounding things around it, if that was a boon to bring in money, to bring in revenue that will rejuvenate a city, they would all be no-brainers. This would be an absolute, there wouldn't be any stumbling blocks for putting a stadium in downtown Las Vegas. For that matter, there would have been no problem building a stadium on anywhere in Oakland. Look at Oakland is no longer an inexpensive place to live. No place in the Bay Area is inexpensive to live, but there are lots of places of Oakland that could use the proverbial, what's the word? The rejuvenation. And if stadiums and sports complexes do that, then Oakland would have had a stadium back in 2005. It would be Howard Terminal, or Jack London Square, or Laney College, or any of the thousands of places. Or Fremont would have been falling over themselves. Or San Jose would have been so gung-ho that they would have bought out the San Francisco Giants' territorial rights. If that were the case. If that were the case, the Marlins would have had a better stadium situation, and the Rays would have a stadium situation, and the Expos would have built Labatt's Field. If this were the case, that a stadium brings money in, it's a great financial decision to make with public money and everything, why would there be a problem? Wouldn't you want to be the mayor and the city council? Like, oh my God, think of the money that will flow in there. So why doesn't it always happen that way? Because kind of like buying the insurance at the rental car that they push on you, it's not true. It's not something you need. And it's not something that works. And yet this week, Rob Manfred, who is going to be retiring as the commissioner, and remember folks, vote Sully for commissioner, baseball commissioner for a change. I want the job because I want what's best for baseball and also what will make baseball profitable and everything like that. I'm going to have pictures of Chairman Mao behind me. I understand that it's a business, but Rob Manfred on Monday was at some big event, the Associated Press Sports Editors Commissioners meetings and barbecue, some big event. And he was Dan Perry of CBS Sports wrote a great article about this. And Manfred started talking about public money being used for stadium development. Now, I've made it clear my stance. See this penny here? I'm going to hold it. Okay, I'm going to pick it up right now. Here, I'm going to hold it right to the camera. This penny here is more than I think should ever be spent of taxpayers' money to build a stadium. Now, if you want to use taxpayer money to build, like, a train station or fix up streets or stuff like that, that's one thing, because that's something that everyone in the city can use and could improve part of the city. But a palace for a billionaire owner should not be paid for at all with public money, in my humble opinion. That's not a public space. It's a private facility used for a private multi-billion-dollar corporation that a billionaire will own. So no, taxpayers shouldn't pay for that. If it was such a good investment, they should just throw their own money. But public money always comes into play. And Manfred said there's been a long history of public financing of not just baseball, but sport venues in general. Expenditure of public funds that people have seen justified as part of the quality of life and entertainment opportunities available to residents of particular cities, as well as an economic driver. That's here's my comment on that. That's the equivalent of forcing the insurance when you rent a car. And this is Manfred. I recognize this is something that some people will debate, but whatever the merits of it across the board, investments in baseball facilities is the best of the investment for the number of games. It drives more people into the market. I do think that in today's world, almost all projects, be they stadiums or renovation, almost without exception, and it's different than it was a couple of decades ago, are public-private partnerships where owners' teams making substantial millions of dollars of investment. Well, that's a new one. The public-private partnerships, kind of like hot chili or jumbo shrimp. I don't believe him. And by the way, we have had decades and decades of studies. As the Perry article on CBSSports.com says, they've been studying this since 1994, over 30 years. And the Robert Bodd findings that the Perry article quotes says, far from generating new revenues out of which other projects can be funded, sports investments, in quotes, appear to be an economically unsound use of a community's scarce financial resources. We have seen a few exceptions. We have seen a few times that a ballpark has rejuvenated a part of a city. And I think because there's that bias towards taking a look at what happened with, for example, Camden Yards when they first opened. Yes, it rejuvenated part of Baltimore. When AT&T Park or Oracle Park or whatever it's called now in San Francisco, the best ballpark in baseball, sure, it took that section near China Basin and made it more of, brought a lot of businesses there. But most times you see it doesn't make any real impact. Most of the time it's sitting there empty. It just is. And you don't see the big economic boom that's worth the hundreds of millions of dollars. I know I'd rather be talking about the game, but this is a bunch of crap that has been peddled over the decades. Oh, it's good. It's we need public money. Public-private, that's a new one. That's hilarious. If it was such a great investment, then I have no issue with private investors buying the land and building it up. None. That's why I don't have an issue with the park in San Francisco. I don't have an issue with the new Yankee Stadium or the new Citi Field, even though Yankee Stadium was a palace. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say because they were drawing well, and at the time, the late 2000s, the Yankees were actually pretty good. There was no need to build a new Yankee Stadium. What were they going to do? Move to Nashville? But it was privately built through investors and through the Yankees. Yes, there's some public money, but for the infrastructure around it. But that's public use right there. And where the old stadium was is now a public park. So yes, that element of it is true. I don't see the argument of it bringing in tons and tons of money to the South Bronx. But when you hear that line, call it out. Say, show facts, because the facts have been laid out on the other side. It's not a good use of public funds. I can tell you, as a public school teacher, which I am, and a rabid baseball fan, which I also am, I love a new stadium, but that money should be spent on schools, fire departments, police departments, fixing roads, things that are public. That's the whole idea of what taxes and public money is. We pool the taxes and the money from there, and that's used to provide services that we all can use. And the idea, think about it for anything else. We're going to raise public money to build a giant theater that only rich people can go see. We're going to spend all this money to build like the Sphere in downtown Las Vegas, or something that is not a public thing. If it were anything other than sports, it would be laughed off the screen. Oh, we got to build movie theaters that way. We got to build. I can't even think of anything that's more stupid. But the fact that that line is still being said, quite frankly, gets me a little mad. Gets me a little miffed. And just let's not let people keep saying that. It's not true. So maybe we can stop saying that and say, hey, spend your money honestly. You put the money in if it's such a great investment. And I need to exhale. Hey, today's episode is brought to you by our new friends over at Stitch Fix. You know, as you can tell, I'm a fashion plate. Obviously, clothes mean a lot to me as I'm wearing my Washington Senators shirt. But I can tell you, I get a great boost of confidence when I get an outfit that makes me look really good. In fact, just the other day, I had to wear, I couldn't show up dressed like this. I had to show up to school where I was meeting some of the parents of some of my kids that I teach. And I put on a great shirt and a nice pair of pants. And a couple of my teachers' aides said, wow, you look really good right now, which A, made me feel confident, and B, made me wonder how bad I look on the other days. But I got that big boost of confidence of what I wore through Stitch Fix. Stitch Fix, you get a stylist who understands your style, size, and budget. They do the shopping for you, and they got me that fantastic outfit for the teacher conference. And they looked at me and said, now that's a teacher I can trust. You think I get that wearing the senator's shirt? I don't think so. So how do I do it? Let me tell you. You can easily upgrade your wardrobe this year with a professional stylist that helps you find new on-trend favorites that'll work just for you, just like it did for me. I just give the stylist my size, style, and budget preference. I order boxes when I want and how I want. No subscription is required. And they send me 5 just for me pieces, plus outfit recommendations and pro styling advice. I keep what works and I send back the rest. And the outfit I made was great. The green made my eyes pop. Stitch Fix makes it all so easy. And they send just right pieces and it fits right on point. It's like they have style ESP. I don't know how they do it. It's outside my pay grade. As I said, public school teacher. But I don't like to shop either. And they save me that time and the effort. Plus, I get outfits that make me look really good. Although, look what they have to work with. And if you don't love something, send it back. Shipping, returns, exchange, they're always for free. Style that makes you feel as good as you look. Get started today at stitchfix.com/MLB and get $20 off your first fix. That's stitchfix.com/MLB for $20 off. Stitchfix.com/MLB. Must redeem within 7 days of sign up. Stitch Fix. Hey, you're looking good. Hey, where do you go for your sports information? Let me tell you, there's a great place for all the analysis, opinions, and news. That is Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you to bring you all the biggest stories and tapping into the fantastic Locked On community. Locked On Sports Today. It streams 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channel app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm sorry I had to go on that little bit of a rant, but it just got me angry because, again, if those investments were so great, we would be talking about this A's team in Jack London Square or wherever, probably. The Jack London Square one was really great. And the Howard Terminal design also was terrific. That would be the hub. Instead, they're talking about playing a little bit in Sacramento, a little bit in Vegas. I don't believe the Vegas thing's. I'm starting to think the Vegas thing's not going to work. All right, well, let's just talk about the A's for a second. Remember the thing we want to talk about? Because yes, the series with the Texas Rangers was incredibly disappointing, especially because there were 2 games. One where they were, 4 outs away from winning, and the other they had the winning run at the plate in the bottom of the 9th, and they still dropped 3 out of 4. But let's continue to take a step back, okay? In the last 10 games, the A's have won 6 of those games. Last 10 games, even with the lousy series against Texas, the last 10 games they're playing winning baseball, okay? The longer you can do that, the better off you'll be. And while they got all the way to 500 and they fell, and now they're 3 games under 500. But guess what? They are only 3 games behind the Seattle Mariners right now. And technically only 2.5 games behind them in the standings. If the A's sweep the Mariners, I don't think they're going to, but if the A's sweep the Mariners, they will leapfrog the Mariners into second place. That's best case scenario, obviously. But if they just win the series, if they take 2 out of 3, their record would be 20-22. Okay. And the Mariners record would be 21-20. So that's, again, creeping, and staying relevant. And the best part of how things have unfolded the last few weeks is that the Mariners have been wetting the bed. They've dropped the last couple of games. The A's have picked up an entire game over the last 10 games, and now they're going to be playing in a head-to-head. of which they're not going to be as many head-to-head games as there used to be. So today, Blackburn is going to be pitching against Wu. Now, Wu's not a bad pitcher, but he hasn't pitched yet this year, and Blackburn has looked very good. This first game is critical. Say it with me, folks. The first game is critical. So the reason why it is it puts the A's in a situation where the Mariners are on their heels, where you just have to split the next two games, and then you would have won the dang series. And knowing that you got the Astros series coming up, you're hopeful that you'll be able to pick up some there. This first game, the A's have the advantage in terms of the pitching matchup. I would go Blackburn over Wu's first game of the year. Now, Miller is pitching game 2 against Seattle, and Seattle has very good pitching. And right now, it's not clear who the A's are pitching in game 2. Right now, a faceless man named TBD is in there, and there's an outside chance it could be me. In the final game, the A's also have TBD against Luis Castillo, who was an excellent pitcher. So let me break this down for you. The Mariners have a pitcher who hasn't pitched all year against Blackburn. The A's have the advantage in game 1. Castillo is a very good pitcher, former All-Star, pitching quite well, thank you very much. And the A's are not sure who they're throwing the next two games, which means there is a real possibility the Mariners could win those last two. So you have to win that first game. You have to, and put Seattle on their heels and force them to win those next two. Now, of course, we're all want to see them have a sweep, but win that game 1. Win that game 1 and take control of the series. Win that game 1 and put all the pressure on Seattle. Granted, Seattle wins game 2, you suddenly have a rubber match there. But the A's haven't lost a rubber match game yet this year, and we're in mid-May. We got to look at this year as small victories. Because the Astros have been playing poorly, because the Angels look disastrous, the A's are not in the cellar. Hell, they're not even 4th place. Again, a small victory. They tasted 500 in May. Again, victories we didn't think we were going to see. The goal for the A's is simple right now. In about 3 weeks, we will be in Memorial Day, right? Memorial Day is the unofficial beginning of summer. And really, after Memorial Day, I believe, is the first time you could really take a look at the standings and say, who the hell are we? Because a third of the season will be past. The goal for the A's right now is simple. Get to Memorial Day relevant. Get to Memorial Day. You're not in last place. You're not in 4th place. And you're within striking distance of 2nd place. That's the goal. And that's possible. Now, once you get past that goal, then we can set a new goal for June. But the key is to win tonight. So everybody, watch it. Turn on NBC, SCA. See if you have an app. So whatever you do, turn it on. Listen to the game on your A's cast and follow them, because guess what? This is a oddly big game in May because they're little victories. This is going to be a year of gigantic defeats, psychologically and emotional. So let's focus on those little victories right now, because right now, let me tell you, if this team is relevant, we are going to have a lot of fun in this, the final year of Oakland. Right now, let's talk about our friends over at Policygenius. Policygenius is the nation's leading online marketplace for life insurance. It saves you time and money so you can provide your family with a financial safety net starting today. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 a year for $1 million of coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exam. Life can be so unpredictable, and Policygenius can take away some of the worries of what your family would do if something happened. Policygenius gives you unbiased advice from a licensed expert support team. They have no incentive to recommend one insurer over another, so you can trust their guidance. Thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot from customers talk about Policygenius, and they found their best fit for their needs with Policygenius. Check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com/LockedOnMLB or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you can save. That's policygenius.com/LockedOnMLB. Now, this might be the last time I could talk about this because let me tell you something. Mother's Day is right around the corner, and my mom is listening to me. Actually, I can tell she's listening to me right now. I just saw my mom in the chat. Okay, Mom, I know why you're here. You're trying to see if I can reveal what I'm getting for you as a gift. I'm not going to do it, Mom. I'm not going to tell you if I'm getting flowers for the kitchen island. I'm not going to tell you if you're going to get self-care essential products or the latest tech for Mother's Day, but I'll tell you what. I will tell you how you're going to get it. You're going to get it through DoorDash. We're probably going to use same-day delivery because it's almost Mother's Day, but we could book it days ahead of time. We'll get great savings, Mom. They'll make you proud of us with a Dash Pass membership and save with a $0 delivery fee and reduced service fees on eligible orders from Dash Pass merchants that meet the minimum subtotal. Other fees, including service fee, apply and terms apply. You too can order now and get everything you need for Mother's Day on DoorDash. Use code LOCKEDONMLB to get 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next flour, convenience, grocery, or retail order now on DoorDash. That's promo code LOCKEDONMLB. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply. Don't worry, Mom. You're getting your present. Hey, here's a reminder that Locked On has created the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channel app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local extras of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channel app. On the latest edition of I Bet You Forgot They Were on the A's, I'm going to bring up a superstar who has been sadly underappreciated. And I think some bitterness in terms of how he interacted with the press early in his career may have cost him a chance to go to the Baseball Hall of Fame. I'm talking about Dick Allen. Dick Allen was a tremendous player, one of the great rookie seasons of his time when he played for the Philadelphia Phillies, a team that nearly came tantalizingly close to winning the pennant in 1964. Dick Allen played for the Phillies in a period of time that was a little rough to be an African-American playing for the Philadelphia Phillies. And in the meantime, he wound up having tremendous years with the Phillies and yet still clashing with some of his teammates. Now, one of the players he clashed with was Frank Thomas. No, not that Frank Thomas, the other Frank Thomas, who essentially tried to attack him with a bat. I'm not kidding. But he was someone who didn't earn the trust of the predominantly white press in Philadelphia, who thought he was a surly, unlikable guy, even though nothing seemed to show that was the case. And he was traded in the controversial and famous trade between Philadelphia and St. Louis that tried to send Curt Flood from the Cardinals to the Philadelphia Phillies. Look up who Curt Flood was. He essentially was the first person to challenge free agency in a trade that involved Dick Allen. Now, Allen bounced around between the Cardinals and the Dodgers and kind of had the reputation of being a troubled player. However, when he arrived in Chicago in the early 70s and he was playing for a pretty laid-back manager, Chuck Tanner just let him be. And what happened? He won the American League Most Valuable Player. And the Wampum, Pennsylvania native grew up in Wampum, Pennsylvania, absolutely flourished with the Chicago White Sox in 1972 and arguably saved the team, as the team at the time was looking long and hard about leaving Chicago at that point. That's a whole different podcast to talk about. He was a huge fan favorite in Chicago, but eventually injuries started to catch up with him. He wound up going back to the Phillies, was picked up by the Braves, actually never played for him, came back to the Phillies in time to be a part of the team that wound up winning the National League East and became a bit of a mentor to Mike Schmidt. And in his career, if you look at his percentages and you look at the era he played, which was a pitching dominant era, his numbers, while not achieving the 3,000 hits or 400 home runs, in terms of the era he played in, he had some of the greatest offensive seasons of all time when you consider he was up against some of the great pitchers of all time. Well, as he was bouncing around towards the end of his career, he somehow wound up on the Oakland A's. In 1977, the A's had been strip mined. They had lost Reggie, Raleigh, all their big stars. Only Vida Blue was left. And that year, they were playing basically a shell game of a bunch of young players picked up and also veterans who they were hoping had one last gas. Doc Ellis played on the team briefly. Manny Sanguillen played on the team briefly. And Dick Allen was there. Man, you had Dick Allen and Doc Ellis on the same team. Well, he had a couple of big games. And Jack McKeon, the manager, was pretty keen of putting him in his lineup because he was one of the few major league hitters in the lineup. Now, back then, the A's were played a little more loosey-goosey of what you could put on their uniforms. Vida Blue had Vida, not Blue, on the back of his uniform. And Dick Allen didn't put Allen on the back. He put Wampum, his hometown. He also wore the number 60 because that was his high school class. So essentially, his back of his uniform was Wampum class of 60. He was still a talented hitter, and he wound up hitting a big home run off of Ron Guidry towards the end of his time there. But he didn't want to be a DH. The DH was relatively new. He was pretty much a National League type hitter, and he felt that the DH was a bit of a cop-out. And he had an agreement with Finley, the owner of the A's, that he would not be the DH. Something, of course, that he did not tell the manager, Jack McKeon. And McKeon, in a game in June, wrote Allen in as his designated hitter. And he didn't want to play. And he eventually, he left the team because he was starting to feel shoulder injuries. He didn't want to be DH. And Finley caught him showering in the clubhouse, suspended him for insubordination for not being the designated hitter, and Dick Allen said, "I'm out." Now, granted, he came back for spring training the next year for the A's, but he got released. Dick Allen's missed the Hall of Fame vote with the Baseball Writers Association, mainly because the writers didn't seem to like him, and then the Veterans Committee had him miss the input to the Hall of Fame by a single vote, and he died just a few years ago. He had a wild, wonderful, sometimes controversial career, but he finished his career with a strange A's team, and a moment where, if you remember Dick Allen, who, by the way, he also recorded a bunch of R&B albums that actually aren't bad, then I bet you forgot his wonderful career ended with the Oakland A's. Gravity Fall Pines asked me, is there a set time schedule for Locked On A's is live? No, it's when I do it. I don't have a scheduled time. And my mom wrote, "Can't you tell me regarding the presents?" No, Mom, you heard the ad. All right, we're wrapping this up. We're going to come back on Sunday or Monday to wrap up the weekend. Thanks for listening to us. Follow us at Locked On A's on Twitter or on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram, saying BS to BS and wondering if this would torpedo a move to Las Vegas because if it was so good, wouldn't they be putting up the money? This has been Locked On A's. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. I hit the wrong button. That's called doing a live stream.